The summons. Dust motes danced in the weak morning sun slanting through the hallway windows as Jake the Snake Sullivan watched Mikey Peterson struggle with his overstuffed backpack. An easy target. Jake grinned, a flash of teeth that promised trouble. He sidled up behind Mikey, feigning innocence. "Need a hand there, Mikey?" Before Mikey could answer, Jake gave the backpack a swift kick. Books, pencils, and a half-eaten sandwich exploded onto the floor. Mikey, red-faced and on the verge of tears, scrambled to gather his belongings. Jake just laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the hallway. "Whoops. Butterfingers, huh, Mikey?" He sauntered away, the sound of Mikey's stifled sobs a twisted sort of victory. He hadn't gone 10 steps when he heard the metallic cling of the school's PA system. Mrs. Higgins' voice, usually a soothing bomb of morning announcements, crackled with a distinct edge. "Jake Sullivan, please report to Principal Thompson's office immediately." Jake's stomach clenched, a sensation he hadn't felt since his disastrous attempt to dye his hair blue in 7th grade. Principal Thompson. 40-something, blonde, and perpetually unimpressed. He was summoned often enough to know the drill, the disappointed sigh, the lecture about wasted potential, the inevitable detention. But this time felt different. He could hear the barely contained fury in Mrs. Higgins' tone. He shrugged it off. Probably just Peterson snitching. Thompson couldn't prove anything. Still, a little insurance wouldn't hurt. Skipping class, Jake headed to the biology lab. He knew Mr. Henderson kept a tank of frogs for dissection, small, slimy, and perfectly suited for his purposes. He grabbed a discarded drawstring bag from the lost and found, carefully scooped up a dozen of the amphibians, and tied the bag shut. This would be his masterpiece, his swan song of chaos. A fitting end to his reign of terror at Northwood High. He imagined the scene, Principal Thompson, perched behind her desk, launching into her usual spiel. And then, the grand finale. The bag of frogs, released upon her pristine white blouse. The look on her face. It would be legendary. His pace quickened. He could almost taste the sweet victory, the rush of adrenaline that came with pushing the boundaries, with defying authority. This wasn't just about avoiding a scolding. This was about proving he was in control, that he wasn't just some screw-up, but a force to be reckoned with. He reached Principal Thompson's office, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," her voice was sharp. He tightened his grip on the drawstring bag hidden behind his back. "Showtime." The principal's office. Jake the Snake Sullivan swaggered down the hallway, his Timberlands echoing on the linoleum. A grin stretched across his face, the kind that promised trouble. He clutched the burlap sack tighter, feeling the slick, cool bodies shifting inside. No remorse gnawed at him, only a thrill of anticipation. Thompson was going to lose it. The principal's office was tucked away at the end of the hall, a sanctuary of calm amidst the teenage chaos. The door was ajar, revealing a glimpse of soft lighting and muted colors. Jake pushed it open wider, stepping into a space that felt more like a living room than a place of disciplinary action. A plush, floral-patterned sofa sat against one wall, flanked by overflowing bookshelves. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The scent of lavender hung subtly, a stark contrast to the Axe body spray that clung to Jake like a second skin. Principal Thompson sat behind a large, mahogany desk, its surface surprisingly uncluttered. She was a woman of quiet elegance, her blonde hair neatly pulled back in a low bun. Her expression was serene, almost welcoming. Jake had expected anger, frustration, maybe even a hint of fear, but there was none of that. Just a calm, steady gaze that met his. He underestimated her. Saw her as an easy target, a middle-aged woman out of touch with the realities of high school. "Jake," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Please, come in." He sauntered forward, the burlap sack swinging casually at his side. "Thompson," he drawled, a smirk playing on his lips. "You wanted to see me?" He stopped a few feet from the desk, close enough to see the faint lines around her eyes, the subtle flicker of something unreadable in their depths. This was it. The moment of truth. He tightened his grip on the sack, ready to unleash his amphibian army. With a swift, practiced motion, he flung the sack open, aiming for her crisp white blouse. The frogs, startled by the sudden release, leaped out in a chaotic flurry of green and brown. Jake watched, a triumphant laugh bubbling in his throat, as they scattered across the desk, the floor, and directly towards Principal Thompson. But instead of the shrieks and flailing he anticipated, a strange stillness settled over the room. Thompson didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on Jake with an intensity he hadn't seen before. He felt a prickle of unease, a sense that he had miscalculated. Terribly. Operation Frog Drop. The damp burlap snagged against Jake the Snake Sullivan's shoulder blades, its weight amplified by the frantic chirps rising from within. Each footfall across the school's gleaming floor echoed the tremor in his gut. Summoned by Principal Thompson, a force even his bravado couldn't dismiss, he approached her office. The frosted glass door, emblazoned with her name in elegant gold script, seemed to mock him. He inhaled deeply, then shoved it open, the hinges emitting a mournful complaint. Behind a broad oak desk sat Principal Thompson, her blonde hair arranged in a severe coil. Her gaze, a piercing blue, locked onto him. "Jake, please, come in," she requested, her voice an unnervingly calm surface. This was it, the point of no return. The sack felt like lead. "You sent for me, Principal Thompson?" "Indeed, Jake. Regarding your recent actions." She formed a steeple with her fingers, her eyes unwavering. Jake fidgeted, the agitated frogs rustling inside their confinement. He braced himself for the inevitable reprimand, the looming detention. Impatient, he opted for direct action. With a huff, he appended the sack, unleashing its squirming cargo upon Principal Thompson. A dozen amphibians, sleek with moisture, exploded into the air. They splattered across her desk, plopped onto the floor, and, satisfyingly, adhered to her immaculate white blouse. Pandemonium. Frogs scattered, their frightened cries echoing the boy's silent scream of defiance. For a fleeting instant, surprise registered in Principal Thompson's eyes. Then, just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by an expression bordering on amusement. No shriek. No leap. Not even a twitch. Instead, with deliberate slowness, she pushed back from her desk. Her movements were precise, economical. Reaching down, she gently cradled one of the escapees, its skin shimmering under the harsh fluorescent bulbs. "Well, Jake," she remarked, her voice maintaining its unnatural evenness, "this is certainly novel." She paused, scrutinizing the creature in her palm. "However, I suspect you may have underestimated your opponent." A subtle shift rippled through her demeanor, a hardening of her jaw. "I have spent years on a dojo, Jake. Now, pick them up. The glasses come off." Jake's laughter bounced off the sterile walls of Principal Thompson's office, a hollow, triumphant sound. He watched the frogs, a writhing, croaking mass, clinging to the front of her white blouse, some already hopping onto the mahogany desk. He'd imagined her shrieking, maybe even fainting. The image had fueled his audacity all morning. But Principal Thompson just stood there, a small frown creasing her brow. "Seriously?" she asked, her voice remarkably even. Jake puffed out his chest. "Seriously. Maybe now you'll take me seriously." He spread his arms wide, gesturing at the chaos he'd unleashed. "Think of it as a wake-up call." She sighed, a sound that somehow managed to convey both weariness and an undercurrent of steel. The frogs continued their frantic scramble. The air in the office, thick with the musty scent of old books and floor wax, now carried a faint, earthy aroma of pond water and amphibian fear. Then, slowly, deliberately, Principal Thompson reached up. Her fingers, usually adorned with a simple silver band, moved to the frames of her glasses. The fluorescent lights glinted off the lenses as she pulled them away from her face. The movement was unhurried, almost ritualistic. The office seemed to hold its breath. Jake's laughter died in his throat. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected anger, maybe tears. He hadn't considered this. Without the softening effect of the spectacles, her face seemed sharper, the lines around her mouth etched deeper. Her eyes, previously obscured behind the thick lenses, were now unveiled, a startling shade of grey, like a stormy sea. They focused on Jake, and in their depths, he saw something that sent a shiver down his spine, not fear, not anger, but a resolute, unwavering focus. A determination that felt dangerous. Her gaze held him captive, a silent promise of consequences he suddenly wasn't so sure he wanted to face. The playful smirk he'd worn all day evaporated, replaced by a knot of unease in his stomach. The frogs, still clinging to her blouse, seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere, their croaking softening to anxious chirps. Principal Thompson's voice, when she finally spoke, was soft, almost a whisper. "Jake," she said, her eyes never leaving his, "I think it's time we had a little chat. Without the special effects." Karate Principal. The frogs were everywhere. Leaping from the principal's desk, clinging to the potted fern, one even landed, quivering, on Principal Thompson's pristine white blouse. Jake, or the snake as he preferred, smirked. He hadn't expected quite this level of chaos. Principal Thompson, however, didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. A strange calmness settled over her face, a stillness Jake found more unsettling than any outburst. She reached a hand, slowly, deliberately, and plucked the frog from her blouse. Its tiny, suction-cup feet released with a soft plop. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice dangerously low, "I believe we need to have a different kind of conversation." Jake shifted his weight, the smirk faltering. "Look, lady, I just thought you needed some company." The principal placed the frog gently on the desk, where it promptly hopped towards a pile of meticulously stacked files. She ignored it. Instead, she stepped out from behind her desk, her movements fluid and strangely graceful. She was tall, almost Jake's height, with her blonde hair pulled back severely. Then, she did something completely unexpected. She shifted her feet, widened her stance, and raised her hands in front of her, one palm open, the other formed into a fist. A look of focused concentration crossed her face. Jake stared. Was she mocking him? "What is this, some kind of weird yoga pose?" "Karate," she corrected, her voice still quiet, but now edged with steel. "Third-degree black belt. And I haven't had a good workout in far too long." Jake's jaw dropped. "Principal Thompson? Karate?" It was absurd. This had to be a joke. But the look in her eyes, that was no joke. He swallowed hard, the bravado draining away like water down a sink. She took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Sullivan, I believe it's time you learn a valuable lesson about respect. And amphibians." He backed away, bumping into the door. "Look, maybe I can just clean up the frogs? And we can forget this whole thing ever happened." Her only response was another step forward, the low thump of her shoes against the carpet echoing in the sudden silence. He was trapped. Trapped in the principal's office with a karate-chopping, frog-wrangling woman who looked like she was about to enjoy herself. Jake the Snake Sullivan was officially terrified. The tables turned. The air in Principal Thompson's office crackled with anticipation. Jake the Snake Sullivan smirked, watching the small, green frog slip across her crisp, white blouse, a chorus of tiny plops against the silence. He'd anticipated anger, maybe a shrill lecture. What he hadn't expected was the almost imperceptible sigh that escaped her lips. "Jake," she said, her voice still calm, almost gentle. "Really?" Before he could revel in his prank, Principal Thompson moved. It was a blur. One moment, she was standing there, a picture of composed authority. The next, her hand shot out, faster than Jake could track. He barely registered the shift in her stance, the tightening of muscles beneath her tailored suit. He yelped as her fingers clamped onto his wrist, the grip surprisingly strong. He tried to wrench free, but it was like trying to pull away from a steel vise. Panic fled in his chest, replacing the initial glee. "Let go," he sputtered, tugging harder. Principal Thompson didn't respond with words. Instead, with a smooth, practiced motion, she executed a wrist lock he'd only seen in bad martial arts movies. A sharp pain shot up his arm. He stumbled forward, off balance. He tried to regain his footing, to swing a retaliatory punch, but she was already there, anticipating his move. Another swift block, this time with her forearm, deflected his clumsy attempt. He felt a sickening thud against his ribs. Suddenly, Jake understood. This wasn't the doddering school administrator he'd imagined. This was something else entirely. He saw a glint of steel in her eyes, a quiet intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The frogs were forgotten, the laughter choked in his throat. He backed away, fear replacing bravado. Okay. I get it," he stammered, his voice trembling. The pain in his arm throbbed, a constant reminder of his folly. He looked at Principal Thompson, no longer seeing a target, but a force to be reckoned with. He was completely, utterly outmatched. The tables had turned, and Jake the Snake Sullivan was now the prey. His prank had revealed a hidden depth to Principal Thompson, a strength he never suspected. And he knew, with chilling certainty, that he'd made a terrible mistake. Pinned down. The breath exploded from Jake's chest as he met the cold, hard floor. A lance of agony shot through his shoulder, threatening to drown him. Principal Thompson, surprisingly quick, kept him pinned, her knee a vice on his bicep. He writhed, trying to dislodge her, but her hold was implacable. The bitter taste of defeat flooded his mouth. He was trapped, utterly helpless. "Get off," he rasped, each syllable a strangled sound. Thompson didn't yield. Her face, typically animated by a warm smile, was now an unyielding mass of disapproval. A few wisps of her usually impeccable blonde hair had broken free of the bun, accentuating the forcefulness of her expression. "Not until it sinks in," she stated, her tone unexpectedly even, "that actions carry consequences. Respect, Mr. Sullivan, isn't a request. Responsibility isn't negotiable." He glimpsed the blurry shapes of the frog toys scattered around him, the sting of shame prickling his skin. The open doorway revealed the gaping stares of the secretarial staff. Jake's jaw clenched. Humiliation seared him, far hotter than the throbbing in his shoulder. A primal urge to lash out, to shatter the oppressive calm, clawed at him. But a cold, clear voice in his head warned him that such an act would only deepen his predicament. What the security cameras captured wasn't a prank, Jake. It was blatant bullying. Disrespectful behavior aimed at someone dedicated to helping you. She paused, her gaze unwavering and intense. Do you comprehend the gravity of your actions? A grudging, almost inaudible, yes, escaped his lips. I doubt it. You're operating under the delusion that this is some sort of game, that you can intimidate others and manipulate situations with threats and juvenile antics. That charade ends now. She eased, but didn't relinquish, the pressure on his arm. I recognize a spark of potential in you, Jake. Perhaps more than you see yourself. But potential alone is a barren gift without respect and responsibility. You stand at a crossroads. Continue down this destructive path, and you encounter repercussions far harsher than this. Or, you can make the conscious choice to be better, to rise above this. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken accusations and possibilities. He stared fixedly at the mottled linoleum, the swirling pattern swimming before his eyes, blurred by the film of mortification gathering there. The astringent odor of floor cleaner filled his senses, a sharp contrast to the subtle floral fragrance she usually wore. He pictured his mother, toiling through double shifts to make ends meet, perpetually urging him to strive for improvement, to be a better person. He recalled the familiar shadow of disappointment that flickered in her eyes whenever he faltered. A solitary tear broke free and carved a path down his cheek. I'm sorry, he choked out, the words ragged and torn. I didn't intend to. Principal Thompson finally released him. Rising to her feet, she extended a hand. He hesitated, then accepted it, allowing her to assist him. His shoulder pulsed with pain, his pride lay in tatters, but a novel sensation stirred within him. A genuine pang of remorse. Cleaning up. The stench hit Jake like a wall. Frog guts and fierce sweat mingled in the humid air of the auditorium. Principal Thompson, bless her soul, had spared him detention, but this was arguably worse. He was on his hands and knees, scrubbing the stage where his pathetic rebellion had played out. Each smear of green and brown was a testament to his stupidity. He gagged, pushing a stray eyeball across the floor with his paper towel. He could still feel the throbbing in his ribs where Principal Thompson's foot had connected. Serves him right, a small voice whispered in his head, a voice that sounded suspiciously like the one he usually used to torment others. After an hour, the stage was marginally cleaner. Principal Thompson appeared, her face unreadable. She carried a stack of lined paper and a pen. Now for the apologies, Jake. He slumped onto a folding chair, the pen feeling heavy in his hand. Who did he even start with? Melissa, the girl he'd tripped in the hallway. Kevin, whose lunch he'd knocked over last week. The list stretched on, an inventory of his cruelty. The words felt clumsy, inadequate. Dear Melissa, I'm sorry I tripped you, it sounded pathetic. He crumpled the paper, tossing it into the overflowing trash bag filled with frog remains. He started again. Kevin, I was a jerk when I knocked over your lunch. I hope you can forgive me. He wrote another, and another, each one a small admission of guilt. With each letter, a sliver of the thick armor he wore seemed to crack. He thought of Principal Thompson's face, the way she'd looked at him not with anger, but with disappointment. It stung more than the kick. He thought of the fear in Melissa's eyes, the humiliation on Kevin's face. He had caused that. He, Jake the Snake Sullivan, had made people feel small and afraid. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the auditorium, Jake finally finished the last letter. His hand ached, his stomach churned, but something else was there too, a strange lightness. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, Jake felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be better than the monster he had become. A new Jake. Jake the Snake Sullivan felt smaller than he ever had before. Bruises blossomed under his skin, each drop a painful reminder of Principal Thompson's unexpected talents. He avoided mirrors, the shame too much to bear. School was a minefield. He expected jeers, laughter, maybe even a thrown spitball or two. What he didn't expect was silence. A wary, watchful silence. It was during lunch that the first crack appeared in his carefully constructed wall of misery. He saw Mikey Peterson, the kid who always smelled faintly of crayons, cornered by a group of older boys. They were snatching at his lunch bag, their words sharp and cruel, laced with the familiar venom Jake himself used to spew. Something snapped. A low growl rumbled in Jake's chest, a sound he hadn't realized he was capable of. He moved, not thinking, just reacting. He pushed through the crowd, his presence alone enough to momentarily silence the tormentors. "Leave him alone," Jake croaked, his voice raspy from disuse and a lingering soreness in his throat. The ringleader, a hulking figure named Derek, sneered. "Look who it is." Snakey finally slithered out of his hole. "Gonna cry to mommy?" Jake didn't flinch. He stood his ground, the memory of Principal Thompson's righteous fury fresh in his mind. "He's not bothering anyone. Just leave him alone." He surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. Derek, clearly thrown off by Jake's unexpected defiance, hesitated. The other boys shifted uncomfortably. With a final shove towards Mikey, Derek and his crew backed down, muttering threats under their breath. Mikey, wide-eyed, mumbled a thank you. Jake just nodded, his own surprise mirroring the younger boys. He grabbed a stray apple that had fallen from Mikey's bag and handed it back. The next day in Mr. Harrison's history class, Sarah Chen was struggling with a particularly difficult question about the French Revolution. A snide comment flew from across the room, aimed squarely at Sarah's confused expression. "Maybe if you paid attention instead of daydreaming, Chen, you'd actually know something." Without thinking, Jake spoke up. "Lay off, Mark. She's trying." The class went silent. Mark sputtered, clearly caught off guard. Mr. Harrison, a perpetually weary man, blinked in surprise. Jake, feeling a surge of something akin to righteousness, continued, "Everyone learns at their own pace." Across the hallway, Principal Thompson paused outside the classroom, a stack of papers clutched in her hands. She had been on her way to address Mr. Harrison about a scheduling conflict, but a murmur of voices had stopped her. Peeking through the small window in the door, she saw Jake, the notorious bully, defending Sarah Chen. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. She knew she had a long way to go, but she saw something in Jake that day. Something good. Something worth fighting for. She knew she had made a difference.